Okay, so a topic I had in my mind today was something along the lines of engaging with the world. And what I mean by this is that it's one thing to learn about it online, right? It's one thing to learn about it through academia or through online forums or in classrooms or even YouTube presentation videos. It's one thing to learn about the world through mediated screens, but it's another thing to actually go out there and experience it for yourself. And that's what I really value. I really like that lived experience of going out into the world and seeing it for what it is, while also understanding that there's multiple things going on that helps you to be aware that the world operates on many different levels, whether you call it layers or field of awareness or what else? Or secrets that are withheld from you. It really shows that there are a lot of things that go on without us noticing. And it helps to be aware about the world on a lot of different levels. And I really value that people can, especially with the internet and with social media, can learn things that are valuable about the world, right? But it also helps that you try it yourself, right? There is that DIY culture, that DIY thinking mindset or meme or whatever it is, like that trend that you see online where people say DIY, do it yourself, do this project on your own, do this piece of construction on your own, make this short film on your own, make this piece of art on your own, do this housing project on your own, or do this economic planning on your own, personal finance if you're into that stuff. Yeah, I'm just driving right there. Yeah, the cop is right there because that side of the road, you can't turn to the left right there, unfortunately. Anyways, so what I'm getting at is that the whole DIY stuff I really like, because you get to combine practical action, practical knowledge with what you learned online, or what you've learned, in places that gives you the knowledge to understand the world either broadly or specifically. But it really helps to do it, when you go out there and try things anyways. Just like what I'm doing right now. Right now I am recording this video and doing this vlogging video talking about DIY, do it yourself, lived reality, and the importance of learning things, to show that I'm very interested in making content about this stuff, because it is a part of my YouTube channel. But why did I wanted to bring this up, and how did this connect to something like the algorithm? Well, there was a video that was popping up in my feed titled Gen Z and Millennials, Why This Generation Simply Can't Live. And the reason why I clicked not interested in the video is not because it has millennials or Gen Z in the title. That's not what bothers me. But what bothers me about it is that video, very blatantly and very, oddly words an entire generation as if they can't grow up. And while there is a phenomenon going on right now, sociologically speaking, where there are people that struggle to achieve success or struggle to achieve adulthood in the traditional sense, or are struggling with getting off the ground with things like graduating with a college degree, and yet they can't seem to find employment. I recently graduated, and I'm still finding a place to work myself as a editor and as a filmmaker, and as someone that works in the media field, because I do work in a non-paid internship north of here. People are struggling to form the life path that they want because they feel trapped by their circumstances, by their economic background, or by systemic pressures that just seem to compile up. Again, when it comes to what that video is describing, yes, there is a phenomenon that is observable, that people are making content about. What people mistake, or the mistake that these videos do, is, first of all, they're doing it for the algorithm. They're not doing it to actually help you out. They're doing it to remind you that your generation can't grow up, your generation is trapped by the economy, your generation can't really afford, the accessibility that other generations did, especially of the past. But what these videos actually do is that they simplify the information, and they select pieces of data that are anecdotal, maybe like small percentages, maybe small, groups of people, or just select numbers and think that applies to a whole generation, which is not true on so many levels, because it doesn't account for the fact that yes, many people of this generational, time period do things like work. They go out there and form communities, they form families, or they get involved in society, or they get things done in whatever profession that they're involved in whatever field that they're involved in places that they study. That shows people do quietly engage with life. They are practicing adulthood in their own terms. You just don't see it documented on the internet because that does not fly well with the algorithm. The algorithm obviously needs videos with titles like that reminds people that, oh, wait a minute, you're falling behind, or wait a minute, you're not doing the correct version of adulthood, which is untrue on so many levels because it assumes that there's only one path to adulthood, and that's not true. Adulthood has always been many different things that people have lived through. The whole concept of adulthood in modern terms didn't really come into being until, I think the mid 20th century. I think it was following the post-war economic boom, where people started to en masse go to schools or afford houses or live the American dream. But that was based on a historical precedence, a historical anomaly that doesn't really get repeated that often. Maybe every 40 years, maybe. And it's followed by an economic decline or cultural shifts. These are things that have been going on at least in American history for the last 70 years. Right? Following World War II, we had the economic boom, and then we had the civil rights movement, then we had the counterculture movement, then we had the Vietnam War, and then we had Watergate, and then we had the economic recession of the 70s, and then the 80s, then we had the Cold War anxiety, where the US and the USSR were really going to go with it at each other, and then we had the 90s, and then we had 9/11, and then we had the Bush administration, then we had the 2008 recession, and then we've had the digital age, and then COVID, and then this current fragmented era that we all live in. That's very politically divided, very economically constrained, and very, algorithmically amplified by showing you the worst things, right? So adulthood has always been influenced by forces greater than just people choosing to grow up or choosing not to grow up, because it coincides with what happens outside of someone's immediate sphere of influence. Adults have always had that sense of responsibility where, yes, they want to grow up sincerely, but what that means for them will apply differently depending on the context at hand, because you can't expect everybody of a single generation to grow up in a particular way that you think was the correct one, because it doesn't work that way. I myself am an adult. I'm someone that takes responsibility for my life and does things that adults do. I manage my health. I go out there and do work on Thursdays and Saturdays as an assistant for a multimedia department of a church that's there. It's in McLean, Virginia. It's unpaid, of course, but I still work there anyways because I'm building up the experience I need to work in the media field, because I'm someone that studied filmmaking and media and all that stuff. That is necessary. Yeah, it's part of my resume. It may be part of my portfolio, but I don't think there's any material there that's worthy of being portfolio showcaseable, if that makes sense, because it is for a cultural organization that is not for film, but it is part of a media landscape anyways. But aside from that, I've done a lot of stuff too. I've made short films, I've made stop motion videos, I've made tons of videos on my other channel. I'm going to leave it in the link in the description down there, and it is a monetized channel too. If you're subscribed to it, you know what it is. So the point is that, what else? And I engage with life on an everyday basis that shows, yes, I am responsible for the things I do. What bothers me about these videos that you see online, especially when the algorithm sends you these videos on your feed, is that they assume you're not living up to a version of adulthood that was honestly never accessible for everybody. If you're working class or even lower middle class, that version of adulthood does not feel achievable. It doesn't feel realistic given the current economic realities and the current geopolitical landscape right now. That shows, yeah, there are systemic factors that do play into this, but these are systemic critiques. This can be reformed, right? Systems can change, and when enough people call it out and are basically demanding that, we examine these underlying systemic issues and we ask for politicians or activists or content creators or economists or or people that are involved in systemic analysis to either examine the systems or to change them or to reform them or to make them more accessible, so that way it can benefit the economy, it can benefit people who need to be pulled out of the ground, not just by their own bootstraps, but by collective efforts. Hold up. I'm just gonna let this car, because there's two more of them behind me. I'm just gonna wait for that. Okay, so you get what I'm trying to say, right? Is that adulthood has never been about doing it all by yourself. Very few people can actually achieve things on their own, and either it's because they have a lot of money, they have a lot of time, they have a lot of privileges, or because they actually use systems to do things on their own too. And that shows that the algorithm makes these videos, and the video that I just was naming was called Gen Z and Millennials, Why This Generation Simply Can't Live, which is not true on so many levels, even though it is describing an underlying structural concern that people are having right now. It shows you that they're not actually helping you to live life accordingly, right? They're just showing you that, your version of adulthood or your life situation right now isn't where it is because you failed or because your generation is uniquely cursed. And that's just something that is very, let's say, it's very lazy, right? It's something that the algorithm rewards because it's very simplistic. It catches people's attention, when they feel like they can't seem to move from one phase of life to the other. But the problem I have with this is that it ignores the nuances of all this, because there are people of this generation who are legit grown up, who are, tackling the real world, who already have things that adults have, but it varies greatly because you have to factor in things like class, geography, accessibility to healthcare or education or social systems or the internet or, Wi-Fi connections, or even just resources that people need in order to get ahead, right? Hold up, let me cut in here. Right there. So there are people of this generation, regardless of whether you're independent or you're interdependent, you live with your parents or you live with your roommates, or you're transitioning into independence. It doesn't matter if you live with your parents. It doesn't matter if you are independent. What matters is that you have some place to live. You're not homeless. You're not in extreme poverty, and that you have basic utilities. You have access to basic needs of survival to live in this world, to live in modern life. The thing is that the YouTube algorithm always amplifies, content that showcases generational struggle and thinks it's unique to one generation, when it's actually something that every generation has encountered with. Even those that come from privileged background, even those that lived during economic booms, or even those that lived during prosperous times and then is followed by areas of decline. Just look at history, look at the Roman Empire, or look at medieval Europe, or look at what else? The Renaissance age, which was then followed by the Dark Ages. If I'm reading that correctly, I still need to learn more about history. What else? During the first two world wars, there were people that were coming off of World War I and World War II as veterans, and yet they didn't integrate well into society. They couldn't really grow up in ways that people expected adulthood to look like, especially after the wars. And these are things that reminds people that adulthood has always been messy, transitional, uncertain. You have to let go of certain things for you to truly grow up. And these are things that I encourage you, if you're watching this video and you're someone who is struggling, or someone that is trying to get their foot off the ground, or is watching these videos of people saying, I can't seem to have this, or this YouTube video says this generation can't grow up, or this generation is doomed. Don't give these videos too much attention, because these videos are primarily not designed for you. They are designed to amplify algorithmic rage bait content that basically monetizes people's insecurities about adulthood. Yes, there is legit concern. I do watch some of these videos every now and then, but I try to look at these videos to understand, okay, so why are people struggling? What can we do to solve this issue together? And how interesting is it that people turn to YouTube or turn to media and channel this into storytelling, channel this into blogging, channel this into content creation? I find that very interesting, because it shows that people are legitimately struggling, but actually pushing forward, and doing it anyways, going to work, showing up to do the things you got to do, applying for jobs, whether in LinkedIn or in person, or trying to build up skills and a portfolio so that way you can get hired at whatever job or whatever career in the field that you're entering in, so that way you can get ahead, because people especially in society, in modern capitalist societies like America, you do need things like that. Not because it fits with a neat story about adulthood, but because it's practical, because it's something that the system needs. It needs people to live and work and survive in fields that require those kind of skill sets, requires that kind of level of education or degrees or requirements, even if that stuff seems to be sidelined in favor of AI coming in to replace many jobs. I don't know how that's going to turn out, because yes, I have been reading about how AI is replacing most jobs. I'm not sure on what scale exactly, but I have a feeling that some jobs may integrate, maybe they might evolve, or maybe they might be fully replaced. I don't know. I can't predict the future on that. But when it comes to human labor, I would argue that we do need that stuff, because AI can't do everything for you. If you rely on AI to do everything for you, to write essays or to write articles, or for you to make YouTube videos, you're missing out on a skill set that you might have. It's okay to use AI every now and then. I would argue that AI itself isn't bad. It's just the way that these tools are used. At the end of the day, all the writing that I do, especially when it comes to screenwriting or script writing or just writing in general, I do it myself, because I'm the one that has to write it. I'm not going to let AI or ChatGPT or whatever other AI software to do it for me, because I do need to do it myself. And I think it's interesting that we're seeing this transition with how people think the world is supposed to be run and versus how the world is actually being run. That shows the frustration, and I get it. That frustration is real, and I'm with you, man. I'm with you with that frustration that you see online when you see these videos on the internet, amplified by an algorithm that doesn't give a flying fuck about how many uploads you post on YouTube on your channel, or where your place in life is, because what these algorithms want is simply engagement, monetization of the user's content, or amplifying trends that are going on. But it takes very selective data to form a narrative about why people feel like adulthood now is very difficult, even though adulthood has always been difficult. And if you're engaging with life every day, you're working as much as you can, or you're integrating different modes of thinking, because in modern life now, you do need to think in more systemic terms. You do need to think about the systems that shape our world. That's basically the reality of the world we live in, whether you like it or not, or whether you realize it or not. But when you do realize that, you come to see how interconnected it all is, right? Have that greater sense of responsibility to go out there and do the things you got to do, right? Even when it's hard, even when it is confusing, even when it is very uncertain. And I feel like people would benefit greatly if they could just stop watching these videos that this stupid algorithm keeps recommending you. Click the don't recommend, or I'm not interested. Click that button as much as you can on these videos, and you will see that once you engage with life and once you live the version of adulthood that is applicable to your life circumstances, that is according to how you see fit, that's when you stop worrying, you stop feeling concerned about being left behind or struggling to live up to someone else's timeline, and you embrace the struggles that comes with being an adult. Because being an adult isn't just about having it all figured out, or being independent, or what else? Doing everything yourself. It is about figuring out what works for you, and how do you operate in this modern system, that we live in. And sometimes you do got to rely on the help of others, or do things yourself, or try it out in practice. Learn as much as you can, so that way you don't get stuck in that loop of watching these same doom scrolling narratives about why this generation can't grow up, because this generation is very much grown up. They're just growing up very differently, and I don't think that's inherently bad, but it'll look different for everybody. And my version of growing up is something that I can't wait to share more about as time goes on, and when I make more videos. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for spending time getting to hear me talk about this topic. Let me know in your comments down below. What do you think about doing things yourself, about the practicality of knowledge versus how it's taught in things like schools or academia or on YouTube channels, and why algorithms amplify one version of reality versus how reality actually is for a lot of people. Let me know in the comments what you think about that stuff. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video, hit the notification bell icon to stay notified of future uploads. And with that, this was Media Mystic, and I am going to the store. See you later.